She hadn't heard her own name spoken with kindness in months, not at work, not at home, not even in the quiet of her own thoughts. So when a stranger leaned close in the middle of a crowded grocery store and whispered just three simple words, her entire world cracked open, and she broke down crying right there between the cereal aisle and the frozen foods. Before we begin, if stories like this touch your heart, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Welcome to Kindness Story Hub, where real stories remind us that even the smallest acts of kindness can change someone's life. Her name was Melissa Carter, and to most people, she was invisible. At 38, Melissa lived in a small apartment outside Columbus, Ohio. She worked the early shift at a local diner off the highway. Every morning at 4:30 a.m., her alarm buzzed in the dark. She'd lie there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, trying to gather the strength to start another day that felt exactly like the one before. Her life hadn't turned out the way she'd imagined. 5 years earlier, she had been married. She had a house with a small yard and a dog that barked at the mailman. She had friends who came over on weekends. But after her husband left and the divorce drained what little savings they had, everything changed. The house was sold. The dog went to live with her sister. Most of the friends quietly drifted away. Melissa never talked about it. She just kept moving. At the diner, she tied her apron, poured coffee, and smiled at truck drivers and construction workers. "Morning, hon," she'd say in a cheerful voice that felt like it belonged to someone else, but lately, even that smile felt heavy. 2 weeks earlier, her manager had pulled her aside and told her that business was slowing down. Her hours might be cut. "It's nothing personal," he said, not meeting her eyes. "We're just trying to survive." She nodded and said she understood. But that night, sitting at her tiny kitchen table with a stack of bills, she felt something inside her begin to sink. She had always prided herself on being strong, on not asking for help, on handling things quietly. But strength gets tired. That Tuesday afternoon, after a long shift and very little sleep, Melissa stopped at the grocery store. She had a short list: eggs, bread, milk, and the cheapest box of pasta she could find. She moved slowly through the aisles, doing mental math in her head, making sure she wouldn't overdraft her account. Around her, life buzzed on as usual. A little boy begged his mother for cookies. A couple argued softly about which brand of cereal to buy. An older man studied labels through thick glasses. Melissa kept her eyes down. When she reached the checkout line, she realized she had miscalculated. The total was $4.37 more than she had in her checking account. Her face burned as the cashier told her the amount. She asked the cashier to remove the milk and the pasta. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Even though she wasn't sure what she was apologizing for, the people in line shifted impatiently. She could feel their eyes on her back. That was when she heard a voice behind her. "I've got it." Melissa turned. A man in his late 50s stood there holding a basket with a few items inside. He wore a worn baseball cap and a faded denim jacket. His face was kind but weathered, like someone who had seen a lot of life. "You don't have to," she began. "It's okay," he said gently, placing a few bills on the counter. "Really?" The cashier nodded and finished the transaction. Melissa stared at the bags, feeling something tighten in her chest. "Thank you," she said quickly, grabbing the handles. She wanted to escape before the tears came, but as she stepped away, the man touched her arm lightly, and then he said it. "I see you." 3 words, not loud, not dramatic, just soft and steady. "I see you." Melissa froze. In that moment, the noise of the store faded. The fluorescent lights, the beeping scanners, the murmured conversations. Everything blurred, because those words weren't about the groceries. They weren't about $4.37. They were about the way she had been walking through life, unnoticed, unheard, carrying quiet burdens that no one seemed to acknowledge. Her eyes filled before she could stop them. The man didn't look away. He didn't rush. He just stood there, steady and present. I know that look, he said quietly. I wore it myself for a long time. That was all it took. Melissa's composure shattered. Tears streamed down her face as she tried to speak. I'm sorry, she kept repeating, embarrassed by the sudden wave of emotion. Don't be, he said. There's nothing weak about being tired. They moved their carts to the side so they wouldn't block the line. Melissa wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her sweater. The man introduced himself as Robert. He told her that 10 years earlier, he had lost his wife to cancer. After that, he had felt like a ghost in his own life. He went to work, came home, paid bills, and existed. But he didn't feel seen. One day, he said, a stranger at a gas station told me I looked like I was carrying too much alone. She didn't even know me. But she saw me. And it changed something. Melissa listened, her breathing slowly steadying. I promised myself, Robert continued, that if I ever recognized that look in someone else's eyes, I'd say something. She felt another wave of tears rise, but this time, they weren't just from exhaustion. They were from relief. Someone had noticed, not the tired uniform. Not the awkward moment at the checkout. Not the small embarrassment. They talked for only 5 minutes. But in those 5 minutes, Melissa felt more understood than she had in years. Before they parted ways, Robert said, "You matter more than you think." Melissa walked out of the store clutching her grocery bags, the cool Ohio air hitting her damp cheeks. The sky was turning pink and gold as the sun began to set. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel invisible that night. Sitting at her kitchen table, she thought about those 3 words, I see you. She realized how rarely people truly look at each other. How often they rush past, assuming everyone else is fine. The next morning at the diner, Melissa noticed something she hadn't before. An elderly woman sat alone in a booth near the window. She came in almost every Wednesday, ordered oatmeal and tea, and left quietly. Melissa had served her dozens of times but had never asked her name. This time, she did it. Good morning, Melissa said, setting down the tea. I don't think I've ever properly introduced myself. I'm Melissa. The woman smiled softly. I'm Eleanor. They talked for a few minutes. Melissa learned that Eleanor's husband had passed away the previous year, and the diner was one of the few places she felt comfortable going alone. Before Eleanor left, Melissa squeezed her hand gently. I'm really glad you came in today, she said. Eleanor's eyes glistened. Thank you, she whispered. That means more than you know. Over the next few weeks, something shifted in Melissa. She began noticing people the way Robert had noticed her, the exhausted young mother counting coupons. The teenager studying alone with headphones in. The truck driver staring at his coffee like it held the weight of the world. Sometimes all she said was, "You're doing a great job." Or, "I'm glad you're here." Or simply, "I see you." And every time, she watched shoulders relax. Eyes soften. Faces brighten just a little. She didn't suddenly become wealthy. Her bills didn't magically disappear. Her life wasn't perfect, but it was different, because she understood something now. Kindness doesn't require grand gestures. It doesn't need perfect timing or the right words. Sometimes, it's just the courage to truly see another human being. Months later, Melissa returned to that same grocery store. She hoped she might run into Robert again, but she never did, and maybe that was the point. Some people step into your life for only a moment, just long enough to remind you of who you were. Standing in the checkout line, Melissa noticed a young woman ahead of her struggling to find enough cash. The panic in her eyes was familiar. Melissa smiled gently and stepped forward. I've got it, she said to the young woman. Turned, embarrassed, Melissa placed the money on the counter and then, softly, so only she could hear, said the 3 words that had changed her own life, I see you. The woman's eyes filled with tears, and in that quiet exchange, between strangers in a grocery store aisle, a ripple of kindness moved forward again. because that's how it works. Point one small moment. Point one simple phrase. Point one human being choosing to truly notice another. You never know what someone is carrying. You never know how close they are to breaking. And you never know how powerful three sincere words can be. So today, wherever you are, at work, at home, in line at a store, take a moment to really see someone, offer a smile. A kind sentence. A reminder that they matter. You might not fix their problems, but you might give them the strength to keep going, and sometimes, that is everything.